And liftoff. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
What a sight that is. Good evening. It's been a long wait, but finally, after 2.5 years, the shuttle program is back on track.
Half a day after liftoff, the Space Shuttle Discovery is still performing perfectly.
Several hours ago, the crew of the Discovery released a $100 million satellite. The astronauts are performing their chores without a hitch, much to the great relief of everyone down here below. Very early this morning, before daybreak, there was a problem. NASA was worried about high-altitude winds, and they delayed their liftoff for an hour to study their weather charts. Even though the blastoff was still in doubt, the crew members were told to suit up. The astronauts were ready to fly once again. But as Discovery astronauts entered the spacecraft, another problem kept some of them waiting. Inside, a blown fuse kept a cooling fan from working in a spacesuit. That problem was quickly resolved. However, the problem of the weather was still a concern. Shifting winds about 40,000 feet high that could tear the shuttle apart. Soon, though, it was decided that Discovery could handle the winds which were beginning to die down. It was former astronaut Robert Crippen who relayed the good news.
I have pulled the technical community, and you will have our consensus to proceed with this launch. Good luck and Godspeed.
We have main engine start. 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
In every way, the liftoff was perfect. On the ground, cheers and sobs and tears of relief. Discovery momentarily disappeared behind the clouds, and then to more cheers, it reappeared. Then Discovery passed the 73-second mark, the moment Challenger had exploded.
Discovery, go at throttle up. Roger, go.
The redesigned booster rocket had worked, and the used-up casing split off from the shuttle to drift to the sea for recovery. The people of NASA were elated, even though their liftoff occurred about 90 minutes later than planned.
And so be it, but I guarantee you it was a keeper.
NASA's top management indicated that never again would they compromise their standards.
Speaking as a member of the mission management team, if you've lived through 51L, you're never going to take it for granted.
Incidentally, at 9:37 this evening, Mission Control said goodnight to Discovery for the time being, and the radio transmission went something like this. We will not talk to you anymore tonight, and we certainly had a fun day working with you.
Well, all over the world, people were watching their television sets to witness and hope and pray that the shuttle launch would go smoothly. That goes for so many people in our area as well. It was the next best place if you couldn't be out the Cape. Why not come out to the NASA Lewis Research Center in Cleveland? That's what these people did today. They came to watch the satellite feed of the shuttle liftoff. But unlike the old days when liftoff triggered a round of applause, these people held their breaths, waiting until after the solid rocket boosters had fallen away. Were there any doubts that the rockets would work?
Not really nervous, but very confident that the NASA program would pull it off.
It is that kind of confidence NASA hopes to restore among the public, but even NASA officials were holding their breaths for the first few minutes.
I was present two years ago at the Apollo and Challenger, so I was looking very carefully at the signs.
This time, thankfully, there was nothing to see. Nearby in Akron at the high school where astronaut Judy Resnick went to school, students cheered as they watched America's return to space. One of Judy Resnick's classmates and friend is now an assistant principal, and she wants students to follow Judy's lead.
And that's what we want to teach our students now, you know, to be the very best you can be, to work hard at school, and you can maintain excellence, and you can attain the goals that you set. You just have to work very hard and want to do something, and you can do it. And I think that's what Judy has done for our Akron Public School children.
A scholarship program in Judy Resnick's name is helping students reach their goals.
There were some very, very lucky people who got to see the launch in person today, including our own Roy Weisinger, and he joins us live now from Cape Canaveral. Roy, now that you've had a chance to reflect a bit, your impressions?
Right now, Ted, it's the end of a very long, exhausting, but absolutely exhilarating day. As I told you earlier at 6 o'clock, it's one of those rare days, but we do get those days in this business. One of those experiences that will stay with me forever. I suspect it will stay with most Americans forever. A very, very dramatic day. Eyewitness reporter Bill Yunkin and I watched today's launch from two very different perspectives. Bill went out on Coastal Highway A1A, which is about 13 miles away from here across a lagoon, and watched the launch with over 1 million other people who were camped out along the roadside. And I went out beyond the countdown clock here, out to the end of this little peninsula, and got as close to the shuttle as we're allowed to get. After the launch, I got to Ohio Senator John Glenn.
Well, it was great. I'm just glad to see us get going again. It's important not only from a support for the space station aspect, but now means we can get on to doing the research that the space program is supposed to be doing, and I'm just glad to see this go off successfully today.
East Lake City Councilman Dan Dilberto was here covering the launch for the newspaper he runs, the Community News, a Lake County newspaper.
The banging and the booming that comes out of that was surprising. I didn't know it was that way. Watching it on TV, there's no comparison to seeing it live.
Compare this to the finale of the fireworks at Edgewater.
10 times greater. 10 times.
And Bill Yunkin found Susan Bennett of Columbus watching from the highway, the first time she had seen a launch.
It was great.
How did it make you feel inside as they were counting down?
Proud to be an American, to watch that thing go up, to fly it. Oh, that was great, wasn't it? I enjoyed that. Oh, gosh, that's good.
Do they get any better now?
No, I get this way each one. It's really great to see them. Just to think, you know. Goose pimples.
She got that exactly right. We all felt goose pimples. As you can see, we're about 11.5 hours into the flight now. The flight will last another 3.5 days, and if all goes as planned, the Discovery will come down to California Monday morning. Wilma, Ted?
The future of the program as a whole. When is the next launch scheduled to go now?
This will be very exciting, Ted. It'll be the maiden voyage of a new shuttle called Atlantis, and that will come on November 17th, some 6.5 weeks from now. And there will be about 15 launches over the next 2 years after the launch of Atlantis.
You lucky dog. You got to see it and feel it. I understand you don't just hear the shuttle, you actually feel the noise of it all.
You feel the heat and you feel the ground shaking underneath you. It's really an indescribable sensation.
An exciting, historic day for all of us there.
50,000, so you can see how much altitude they keep as they make that, and how steep that trajectory will be as they make that final approach to landing.
Take air data to GNC only.
GNC only, look out.
And there's our first affirmation, at least for us, that all communications are A-OK. This mission is under the control of the Johnson Space Center now in Houston, Texas, which has controlled it ever since it lifted off from the tower in Kennedy. Lynn Scher is there. Lynn, what does it look like technically from there?
It looks quite as perfect from here as it does from there, Peter. I'd like to point out that Rick Houck, the commander, is wearing that new 70, 80-pound pressure suit, which is an added constraint to them. And these are test suits. They are trying to decide if they want to use them. He gave us a little how-to yesterday in the air-to-ground in the video. It's very, very bulky for them right now, and Rick is sitting there not only with all the things that Mort and Joe and Gene and you have talked about, but he's got this extra suit on, and he's going to have to decide when they get back whether it works and whether they want to wear it. He mentioned yesterday in a press conference he's not sure if, well, he wants to look at it in the future and see. So Rick Houck has landed the orbiter at Kennedy, which, as I understand it, is a lot trickier than landing at Edwards Air Force Base. But now he's landing at Edwards on that wide lake bed, but he does have this bulky suit, which is something to think about.
Well, Lynn, you've led us into a discussion of this mission, because, in fact, when I was looking back over the mission for the last couple of days, if there'd been any glitches, Gene Cernan, the only one I found was this comment from Rick Houck, who said there would be, quote, discussions with the folks on the ground about the survival suits. It's very clear they haven't enjoyed wearing them.
Well, it's a case of trading off the risk for the encumbrances during a normal flight. It is very uncomfortable. It's very difficult. We had a problem that almost delayed the launch, which was that simple circuit breaker that was tied solely to those suits that they hope they never have to use.
A 5-amp fuse.
5-amp
Our
fuse.
energy status is right on the money, which means Discovery is coming right down the exact entry and glide slope that is pre-programmed and preferred. Her velocity now 1,300 feet per second. She's at about 62,000 feet.
They're still greater than the speed of
about
sound
32
here.
miles away from touchdown on runway 17 at Edwards Air Force Base.
Gorgeous looking.
it's a fantastic camera picture, and they are moving well over Mach 1 at this point in time. We'll probably get a sonic boom that'll blow little Joe out of his seat down there.
In fact, that, Joe and Mort, that's exactly how people are going to know, first of all, that the orbiter is back, because of a couple of sonic booms, right?
Absolutely. It's almost as if the orbiter were applauding its safe return to Earth.
Where she will intersect the heading alignment circle. She'll be making a left overhead turn.
There's some precise flying required here, Peter, because as I said earlier,
it's 249 degrees. They'll be shooting for
it's an energy management situation. He is a glider, and he has to transfer the energy in terms of altitude, you know, that
she will touch down
height above the ground, and the speed he has, and dissipate it at the right place and under the right conditions and at the right rate, so that he touches down at the end of that runway. Now, Edwards is big.
Peter, we can see it right overhead here at Edwards now. It's just beginning to make a turn.
And although Joe says there's lots of runway out there for safety, being a pilot, he wants to put it on the end.